Hello, Heather.
Hello, Emily.
How are you today?
Well, I have a giant glass of Prosecco, so I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm amazing. I also have a giant glass of something sparkly. It's not Prosecco, but welcome to the second episode of the Keto Happy Hour.
And welcome to you, my friend.
This is exciting.
It's very exciting. We're doing big things, and this one is going to be a big one for the new year.
That's right.
All those New Year's resolutioners should need to buckle up.
That's right. We're about to take a deep dive into Keto 101.
A deep, long dive. So much to know.
There is so much to know.
Also, so little to know.
Also, you need to know so little to get started.
Let's just do it. Let's just get it done. Let's do the podcast. Let's do the keto. Just do it all.
All right. So in our first episode, you and I both talked a little bit about what got us started on the ketogenic diet. I came from a place of looking at it as a low carb diet, but I had never really introduced fats into my diet before. And that was really the key for me. But I did know certain things like don't eat bread. And I knew a few things about high carb foods to avoid. But once I started, I really, really learned more than I ever thought I wanted to know about sugar, added sugar in foods, blah, blah, blah. So you and I both you started keto about 4 years ago.
Correct.
How much did you know about the science behind keto when you started?
Nothing. Nothing at all. I was a low carber. I saw something, I believe it was on Reddit. I think I change the story every time I tell it, but let's be honest, we don't always have clear memories. But I'm quite sure I encountered the Reddit keto and started to say, oh, what's this? And the only real thing I understood when I started to give it a whirl was you get to have a lot of fat. And
Yes.
I've been a low carber, high proteiner, no fatter for so long. And I said, you know what? Fat sounds good. And that's where I started. And it was, weeks into changing the way I ate that I actually started learning about the science and understanding what on earth keto was, why it's called keto. Spoiler alert, it's short form for ketosis, which is the state in which your body lives when you're eating the ketogenic diet. When you're following a ketogenic diet, it puts your body into ketosis. And so that's why we call it keto.
So yes, keto is short for ketogenic diet, which is a way of eating that puts your body into a state of ketosis.
So much science.
So much science. So in my little research here, my deep dive, I knew that it had been developed as a treatment for epilepsy in the 19-teens. It became a very popular therapy for treating epilepsy, especially in children, before there were any really effective medications. In the 20s and 30s, it pops up in several sort of like scientific papers. But before then, people had been dabbling in a ketogenic diet to mimic the health effects of fasting, which I find really interesting because I also found a lovely human being doing his postgraduate work on the ketogenic diet being used as a treatment for binge eating disorder. And his theory is that the ketogenic diet is the closest that you will ever be able to come to abstaining from food because you're not running on glucose anymore. Your body doesn't have these really highs and lows with sugar. You have a hormonal control. But it's been around for a really long time. It might be becoming popular now, but this is not a new diet.
Well, and what's important to note there is that, so my best friend is a doctor, a pediatrician to be exact, and it is still used to treat some cases of epilepsy in hospitals today. So the ketogenic diet still is used for those reasons. And what's really interesting is I am someone who has ADHD, and there is some anecdotal science, so I'm being careful here, about the focus that is created by the ketogenic diet in a brain. So you someone like me, for example, can live medication free if I am sticking to a ketogenic diet. It really does change the way I feel my brain is functioning.
Yes.
Again, anecdotal, not going too far into the science here because there's not a ton of it. But for someone like me, I find it really attractive because it helps me function at a higher level than I'm usually able to without like ADHD medication. And that's a huge thing for me.
Absolutely. I have also heard anecdotal evidence for the ketogenic diet being helpful for 1,000 things. One of them, I will say, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I have been diagnosed with depression. And it was definitely the last piece of the puzzle for me to really get a handle on it. So I can imagine that as it becomes more popular, people will start studying it more and more and putting more resources into doing long-term studies on the effectiveness of the ketogenic diet in treating different diseases.
Yes. And I think what's so interesting is that the standard American diet is what we've been taught for, like generations at this point. And because of that, it is the norm. And anything outside of that is seen as being, potentially unhealthy, potentially a risk.
Right.
And so a lot of people don't take the ketogenic diet seriously. And by a lot of people, I mean like in the medical community. And as more and more studies come out, I think we're all really hopeful that it's better understood and the implications for health in general is better understood. And things like mental illness, anxiety, depression, ADHD, all these things that right now we typically throw medication at. I'm really hopeful that diet becomes a way in which we're able to treat those things, or at the very least manage those things. I always say that my ADHD I'm never as good as I am on medication. Like if medication makes me 95%, a ketogenic diet makes me about 80%. So I'm never quite at that level, but I'm definitely at a level where I can maintain a healthy life and maintain positive brain function without having to take the medication, and I can control it with diet. And I think that's so important. And I'm really hopeful for the science and where it'll take us in the future, that more and more studies will come out, that it'll be more widely accepted.
Absolutely. And we all have issues. We all have, none of us have perfect health. We usually have something that we're dealing with. And a lot of things I think are manageable. So you can, opt in or out of medication. And if something, like you said, can get you to an 80% where the symptoms aren't interfering with your daily life, then that seems to me a much simpler, better, easier, healthier way to manage your condition than just medication that might be causing side effects. And I'm not anti-medication at all. I just think that eating is something that we do every day. And if we can find a way of eating that supports our health goals, why not start there? Okay, so the ketogenic diet, like we said, is a diet that promotes the metabolic state of ketosis. Our foods have, I think we've talked about this a little bit, standard American diet have so much added sugar that I think the average person is taking something like 250, 300 grams of added sugars a day without even, I'm not talking about sweets. I'm talking about cereal. I'm talking about, oh my God, ketchup. I'm talking about anything that you eat that came in a box.
Christ on a bike. That's a lot.
It is a lot. It's insane. And it's way more than we were ever, I believe, intended to ingest. It is cheap to manufacture. It is cheap and easy to produce, to grow grains and sugars. They store well. And there was an enormous study done to find people's salt, fat, sweet ratio, that sweet spot that made them want to eat more food. So pretty much most things that come to the grocery store in a box have been scientifically engineered to taste good to you and to make you want more, and not necessarily to, bring you your best life, but they were engineered to make you want to buy more of that. And people found out that sweet is good. We like sweet. And the more sweet that you eat, the more sweet that you want to eat.
And I don't want to get too conspiracy theorist here, but people, let me give you some homework. Go back and Google like the 60s and 70s when butter became the devil and sugar became fine.
Yes.
It's fascinating. We honestly don't have time to get into it. We're not going to do that. But just go back and look into when that shift happened, when fat became the thing that was demonized in the standard American diet, and when sugar became the thing that was okay. There's actually ads from magazines in like the 50s trying to advertise a spoonful of sugar as a great way to lose weight. So,
yes.
And that all goes back to lobbyists and politics.
Yes.
I don't want to get crazy here, but oh my goodness, it really is.
It is not a conspiracy theory. It is all very well documented.
Yes, thank you. I shouldn't call it a conspiracy theory. I don't mean it that at all. I just mean that It's all like background players controlling what the message is in terms of health. And it has nothing to do with our actual health and everything to do with money for certain
Yes.
industries. So it's not a conspiracy theory at all. So go homework, go do
Right.
that. You'll go down a rabbit hole. You'll never get out. It's so interesting.
Well, there are a couple documentaries that I think you and I have both seen, and I will link them in our show notes because they're available for free on several platforms right now. And it is interesting, even if you're not looking to begin a ketogenic diet, it is interesting how much of what we eat in the grocery stores, like I said, it's not about bringing us a product that will give us our best life. It is about bringing us a product that we want to buy more of.
I need to confess that I have never watched The Magic Pill.
I have never watched The Magic Pill, but I've watched Sugar, that Sugar film.
I haven't watched that either. No, never. I need to.
You're kidding. Well, it's literally everything that you were just talking about. And it has all of the, the notes and the memos from the company meetings and like, okay, we're going to give this guy $10,000 to say that sugar is really satiating and it can help you lose weight.
Oh, Christ. Okay, I'm watching that tonight.
Yeah, it's all, that's what I mean. It's not a conspiracy theory. Like it is very well documented.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, so if you are wanting to give the ketogenic diet a start, what would be your advice? I have some very strong feelings about that, which is basically, which you and I both agree with, you don't need to know everything about keto to start. All you need to do is stop eating high carbohydrate foods that are easy to avoid, like bread, starchy potatoes, sugars, all added sugars, and then start reading everything. I have an article, I will link it to my webpage where I talk about my sort of top three, the first three steps I think anyone should take if they're looking to start this way of eating. But what are some of your thoughts? How did you start? What did you find really helpful?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with you. Just start from wherever you are. You'll learn things along the way. I get very stressed and will continue to get stressed about people who try to start a keto diet. So they start to go really high fat and they have not yet removed, the bulk of their carbs from their diet. And that stresses me out because if you're not in a ketotic state, then the fat you're consuming can be a problem. So one of the things that I would say is like really cut out those carbs and start to do some deep dive research on what a carb is. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but there are so many things that you don't even realize are, real carby. And I'm not talking about like a slice of fresh tomato. I'm not the girl who's going to tell you need to get rid of that. But I am talking about like certain like gluten-free products. You and I have discussed that before. Certain sugar-free products where you think, oh, this fits into my ketogenic diet, and really it likely does not. One thing that I would say from the get-go is learn how to read labels, which can be really stressful and can feel intimidating if you've never done that before. But like carbohydrate counts are right there on the labels. And serving sizes are terrifying because most of us don't realize what a serving size is. So out the gate, I would just say get those carbs down as low as you possibly can as a starting point. Worrying about protein and fat ratios, like that will come. You'll learn a lot about that. Let me tell you this much about learning about a ketogenic diet. You'll learn a lot about your own body, and it really is a lot of troubleshooting for a long time because everyone's body is going to be a little different. So those ratios, you're going to work on those. But at the outset, I completely agree. Cut all the carbs you can. Don't have croutons in your salad. Don't get bread on your burger. Whatever that is, cut them all out. Get them out of your diet. And then from there, start to figure out the science. I can say this much. The sooner you figure out the science, the better off you'll be. Because when you just start off with just getting the bread out or getting the potatoes out or the pasta or whatever it is you're used to, your diet can suddenly feel really unsatisfactory. You can feel unsatisfied in your meals. You can start to feel like you have either no food options or whatever you're eating is never making you full enough and you really miss those carbs. And so it is going to be some learning at the outset to figure out what it is that you can eat and can enjoy that will leave you feeling satisfied to offset like no longer having a bowl of rice at every meal or whatever it is that you're used to doing. So the sooner you figure that out, the better you'll be. But step one is just stop eating the carbs. And most of us know what those carbs are.
Right. So when most of us traveling through the world in this Western, this, I'm using air quotes again, Western developed world, are eating either a standard American diet or a standard Canadian diet that is very high in carbohydrates of all types, simple carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates. It really doesn't matter what type of carbohydrate you are ingesting. It all is turned into glucose by your body.
Does that include fruit? Fruit's natural, sure.
Yeah, fructose, sure. Anything that ends in OSE is usually a sugar, and your body will turn it into blood glucose. I will say that when you stop ingesting carbohydrates, you're going to feel a little weird. Some people get really sick and they call it the keto flu. Some people, like me, really lucked out and just kind of felt off for a few days. But it's really, really normal. When you starve your body of glucose, blood glucose, there are several changes that happen. I mean, everything from the enzymes that your stomach produces to digest your food to brain chemistry, everything changes as your body makes the transition from burning glucose to fuel to burning fat for fuel. You're going to be burning fat that you eat, dietary fat, and also body fat. You're going to be breaking that down and using that for fuel. And that takes time. It's a big change. If you're someone who has always eaten the standard American diet and has tried every diet, but never the ketogenic diet, you might be used to sort of monitoring what you eat. But this might be the first time that you're trying to remove every single, sugar, starch, grain from your diet. It's going to take you a minute, and that's okay. I always tell people to, if you're not having serious, and there are things you can do for the keto flu too. We can talk about that, strategies to avoid it. But if you are, I don't think that this is maybe for every single human out there. I have benefited greatly from it. It doesn't mean my next door neighbor would. Unless you are seriously, severely ill, I would give it a solid month before I made any sort of judgment about whether or not it was going to be helpful for you. Did you get the keto flu badly when you got all of the sugars out of your diet?
Never ever, but I've always been an electrolyter. And I still maintain that will make all the difference. Even if you may not be someone who is destined to get the keto flu, I would always suggest anyone who's starting out works an electrolyte habit into their day. And now I'm a little more hit and miss. I'm pretty fat adapted. I've been keto pretty long term. So I don't do electrolytes all the time every day. But I can tell you this much. I sometimes get a little shaky and a little headachy. And the first thing I reach for is my electrolytes, because if it is that I'm feeling just a little off or a little headachy, it's more often than not just like a slight imbalance in, my magnesium or my potassium, both of which you typically do need to supplement on a ketogenic diet. Not everyone, but a lot of people do need to add that to their diet. And if I haven't supplemented that in a time, I can find myself getting a little out of whack. And then, I come back to it. And the longer you do it, the less likely you are to need to supplement it. But it's an easy way to, kind of beat the ketogenic flu at the pass. You don't need to wait until you feel sick. You can definitely be proactive.
When you stop eating all of the carbohydrates, you stop producing as much insulin because your body isn't reacting to a spike in your blood glucose by producing a ton of insulin. And because there's not as much insulin in your body, insulin actually, I do believe that it bonds to a water molecule. There's a lot of difference between how we metabolize glucose and how we metabolize fat for fuel. And a lot of people that start this diet will lose 5-10 pounds just immediately. And that is water weight, my friends, because your body is not retaining as much water as it used to, which is why electrolytes are so important when you're eating a ketogenic diet. And people always say salt your food or supplement with magnesium and potassium and what is the other one? Calcium? Sodium, doy.
Sodium.
I was reading about your kidneys, and I mean, we just excrete. When you stop when you stop ingesting carbohydrates, your body will just start excreting so much water that you hold on to metabolize those carbohydrates. So I'm going to link a really good article that I found about the keto flu too, because if you're listening to this and you're starting keto for the very first time and you're scared about keto flu, people that have done it and have gone on and off and have battled keto flu successfully all swear by a certain, there's like 5 steps and they're not hard. It's like drink a lot of water, make sure you're sleeping, get your electrolytes in. It's not something that you should be so scared of that it keeps you from giving this a shot.
Oh my gosh, certainly not. And let me tell you this much, do not get caught up in expensive electrolyte supplements.
No.
Your girl will link, by your girl, I mean Emily, will link some information that I can provide you about like the cheapest way to get your electrolytes. And there are all kinds of amazing products out there that are Zip Fizz. Let me tell you, Zip Fizz is delicious, but entirely unnecessary. And you do not need to spend, it comes out to like almost $1 a tube, not necessary.
Right.
The electrolyte supplementation that I do is like a jar of half salt, which is a mix of sodium and potassium. It's a decreased sodium level for people who have sodium issues. But the reason I buy it is because it's exactly like half sodium, half potassium. I put a teaspoon in water and I add some flavoring. And at night I take a magnesium supplement, and it's cheap as you can get, and it will keep you balanced. So it's one of those things where it can seem overwhelming and you can think, oh, I have to live on supplements forever. But I'm telling you, it is not like that. And there's really economical ways. Just make sure you're getting those levels. And the other thing is, and you're going to read this, and maybe one thing we should have addressed already, is that keto is entirely counterintuitive, because from the youngest age, we're trained how to eat, and it is not a ketogenic diet.
Right.
And one thing that the keto diet allows for is loads of salt. Like that bacon with that salt in it is amazing. Salt your food, add salt to things. That is great. It's not a problem.
Right. We actually need the added electrolytes.
Absolutely. So don't be afraid of salt. If you start a keto diet and you still have in the back of your head, oh, high sodium is bad for me, I can't do that, you will likely encounter some issues. So don't be afraid to salt food. And then magnesium supplement at night is A, economical, like it is not costly to do, and B, it will make you sleep like a rock. And I love taking magnesium before bed. It honestly gives me the best sleep of my life. And if you're a couple weeks into keto and you're feeling like some muscle cramping, or like, when your feet feel like they're tied in a little knot, that's a really good sign that you're short on potassium or short on magnesium. So there are a few warning signs that will come before the flu hits you, and that will let you know it's time to make sure you're upping those different levels.
Yes. And like I said, I am so lucky that I escaped all of that I don't have a ton of experience with electrolytes or any strategies to combat the flu, because I just felt a little off. So when you're saying, that feeling when your feet feel like they're in knots, I don't know that feeling.
Like that happened today. I haven't taken any of my electrolytes in probably 3 weeks. And I was just kind of like kneeling, and all of a sudden my foot cramped up in a horrible way. And that only happens to me when I'm low on my typical supplements. So
that's insane.
Yeah. And that's all based on, guys, I'm 4 years into this. So one thing that we will always try to drive home with you is like, learn to listen to your body.
Yeah.
And you can hear it. Emily and I have completely different experiences. But for me, I know that when I feel those little muscle cramps, that's about my electrolytes. And the second I supplement again, that pain will go away.
Amazing. Well, one thing I also wanted to say, if you talked a little bit about this way of eating being so counterintuitive, because we are conditioned since birth to avoid fat, to avoid salt, to avoid a lot of things that keto actually really focuses on. If you are thinking about starting this, obviously consult with your doctor, especially if you have any type of medical issue. Neither Heather or I are physicians, and we are always going to be talking to you about our experiences, hoping that we can help. But we are not prescribing this. I wish I had learned about this way earlier in my life, because it made such an impact in my life. So I could talk about it all the time, but we're definitely not physicians. But if you are worried about this, there are populations, first of all, the entire world's population until about 200 years ago ate mostly greens, plants if they could find them, and animal products. And there are still populations of extremely healthy people all over the world, Inuit populations in Alaska and Greenland, and that have like an 80% fat intake. They absolutely eat zero vegetables, and they are healthy. Those same populations have been studied since about the 60s on. As soon as they start eating a Western diet, they start getting sick. They get cardiovascular disease. They get cavities for the first time ever. So I don't think that this way of eating is extreme or a fad, or, I mean, it's getting very popular right now, but I don't think personally that there's anything super unhealthy about it, especially when this brings me to my next point, especially when you think about going to the grocery store for the first time and buying groceries for, to start. I have said this 1,000 times, and I still believe it's true. All you need to be successful in the ketogenic diet are groceries. You shop the perimeter. There's literally nothing in my house. Well, there's a couple things in my house, but there are very few things in my house that don't go bad. Everything that I eat goes bad. Everything I eat ends up in my fridge. So, Heather, if you and I were coaching someone about the types of things to pick up on that very first visit to the grocery store, what would be maybe your top 5 to 10 things that you would counsel someone to pick up? And also, I mean, it's probably going to be the same answer. What are the kind of 5, 10 things that you will always find in Heather's fridge?
Oh my gosh, exactly the same answer. So Emily and I are both, we're both on Instagram. She's Keto Copy and I'm HB Keto. And we both do a lot of fun keto baking. And we both have spoken at length about the fact that what you see on our Instagram is not what we eat day to day.
Correct.
And so my top 10, what you need when you're setting out, that January 1st grocery shop because you're starting keto, and then what I would buy on any given weekend, I promise you, they are the same thing. Let me tell you right now. That first section you hit, those vegetables, I probably buy a shockingly low number of vegetables. I can tell you that much right now. One of my favorite things to get, I'm Canadian, so the Superstore Loblaws chain has a President's Choice brand of frozen greens. So it's a mix of kale, collard greens, and spinach. Really economical. It's one of those products that's frozen, but oddly fresh when you cook it up with butter. And greens like that is my go-to for keto vegetables. They make me feel good. I have found digestively cooked vegetables are better for me. I don't do a lot of raw vegetables. It just leaves me feeling bloated and weird. So those greens would be a go-to, or if you want to buy fresh greens, something like that. So collard greens, spinach greens, turnip greens, those are my go-tos. Aside from that, I would always kind of want an avocado. Yes. If you are starting keto, you'll hear people worshiping avocados. There's a reason they're amazing. So in terms of produce, that's about as far as I would go. For really special recipes, I might wander into cauliflower, but it's not in my regular day-to-day diet. It's not something I do. Some people do, but I don't feel panicked about getting vegetables in. And you're going to find the way that keto works for you. So you might load up on vegetables a bit more than I do. And then from there, I'm going to get into deli cheeses and deli meats. Some people will freak out about deli meats. There can be preservatives in there. This is another piece of advice I have for you starting keto. You'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
It's going to be fine. One thing that we're going to talk about in a few minutes is the way in which you can always be bettering your version of keto. And that's something that's important to talk about moving forward. But step one, if you like that salami and you look at that label and it's got, 1 gram of carbs per serving, that's in a range that's totally acceptable in my, respectful submission. And so I would buy deli meats. I'd buy deli cheeses. I love cheese. I love Jarlsberg. I love Asiago. Any of the cheeses that make you happy, pick those puppies up. From there, I'm always going to have eggs. I'm always going to have heavy cream. I am someone who loves breakfast sausage, so I like to keep that around. I love bacon. And then I'm usually going to have ground beef because I find that's really versatile and I can use it in a ton of recipes. That gets me to about 10. One other thing that I'd probably add in there that is, I'm going to say it's on the fence, would be like an almond butter or a peanut butter, a natural one, unsweetened.
Yes.
Sometimes I find that is a lot for a sugar craving, especially at the beginning. I say it with caution because some people struggle keeping it around. It's quite carb heavy. So if you find yourself having 3-4 tablespoons a day, it's probably not helping you. So I say it with caution, but I often would have that as well. So it's kind of my initial 10-piece basket.
Which is, we have so much overlap, not shocking at all. But also what I would counsel people to pick up on that first trip is also things that I still have in my fridge at all times. So my first one is actually butter.
Oh yeah,
I think that. I think
I
that
go through like a pound a week.
Oh, easy.
Yeah.
I cook everything in butter. I cook my eggs in butter in the morning.
Absolutely.
And I am someone that picks up pastured eggs. I can find them very reasonably in my town. So I have butter, eggs. I also have sausage. I love breakfast sausage. I went to my butcher. I have a great grocery store about 3 blocks away, and I had them show me the ingredient list of all of their meats, all of their different mixed sausages, either the links or the loose. And there are 2 or 3 that I can have that have absolutely nothing added to them, like the tiniest bit of spice, but no sugar added. So that's great. So I have butter, egg, sausage in my fridge at all times.
I don't want to cut your mojo for 1 second, but let me just pause here to tell people, like, never be ashamed to ask butchers that.
That's right.
They have the information and they're willing to give it to you, and then you'll know. And I mean, there could be like a pound of breadcrumbs in that sausage. Just find out. Don't be afraid to ask.
That's right.
Especially if you're going to a real meat counter. Like, no problem. Sorry to cut you off. I just think it's really
It's important. And every single time that I post sausage, someone will say to me, "Where did you get that?" The only sausage that I can find has 2 grams of carbs per serving, like per patty. And if you think that sausage is just sausage and you can eat an unlimited amount of it because it's meat and it's 0, you are wrong. Because like I said before, if it's a packaged food, the manufacturer usually is designing that product to make you want more. And adding sugar to things is a great way to do that because it makes you hungry or like a half an hour later.
While we're there, can you just tell me really quickly if my heavy cream says it's 0 carbs per serving? Is that true, Emily?
That is not true. So it is not true. Barely anything is 0. Even eggs are anywhere between 0.4 and 0.6 grams of carbohydrate per egg. Heavy cream, which legally they can say is 0 carb per tablespoon, is actually 0.4 grams per tablespoon. I know it's hard. It's really painful. It's painful is what it is. Because I would just like to pour a whole bunch in my coffee, and I don't want you have to use all those spoons.
But for those of you who are listening and are confused, a fun rule is this. If it's dairy, it cannot be carb-free. If your cheese says 0 carbs or if your heavy cream says 0 carbs, it is not possible. Lactose.
Because it's made from milk.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the kinds of things, and we're going to talk about this. Those are the kinds of things that are ways in which you can improve your ketogenic diet at the outset. Read the labels, follow the labels, you will be fine. But there are all kinds of things that are, mislabeled, even labeled appropriately, following the rules, but actually have more carbs than you realize.
Absolutely. And
you were at eggs, butter, sausage. Please continue.
Butter, eggs, sausage, cheese. I really like Brussels sprouts. I shave them and fry them up in bacon grease, or I roast them. I usually have one green thing, either spinach or Brussels sprouts or mushrooms. That's not green, but those are kind of my veggies.
Yeah.
Spinach is pretty low and I really, really like it. Whole cream. So I think what I meant by that was heavy cream.
Right.
If you don't like it, or if you're trying to watch your calories, heavy cream, heavy whipping cream is 0.4 grams of carbohydrate per tablespoon. Half and half is 0.6 grams of carbohydrate per tablespoon. So you're not really saving a ton going from heavy cream to half and half. It's not really 1 and 0. I just want to throw that in there.
And heavy cream is like 50 calories a tablespoon. So if you have like 2 tablespoons in your coffee, you're talking like 100 calories. For someone like me, like, that's my breakfast. Like, I'm not fussed about that. But like, everyone will figure this out for themselves. I have a couple of sweet friends who really care about keeping things low calorie. but that's not usually my focus, especially not at the outset.
No, definitely not in the beginning. I think, and I have given this advice before, when you're just starting, you're going to be changing so many things. Be kind to yourself and don't worry about your calories for the first week or two. You're going to be ingesting more fat than you're used to, and you're going to probably be experiencing a level of satiety that you're not used to. And I noticed it right away that I was going hours and hours without getting hungry. And I would have a really great, breakfast, cream in my coffee, eggs with either sausage or bacon. And I love sauteed mushrooms and butter. And then all of a sudden it was like 4 p.m. and I hadn't even thought about food yet. So I think that keto naturally gives you a little bit more control over your calories than you're used to because you're not eating foods that were designed to make you want to eat more foods.
Exactly.
Okay, I also have cream cheese.
Oh, how did I forget that? Yes, I buy it in bulk at Costco. I buy so much cream.
Same. And the Philadelphia 5 simple ingredients, I don't know if you have this, is only 0.7 grams per ounce.
Yes. Like the simplest one. Absolutely.
Yes. So
you have to be careful because they're not always labeled differently. So again, look at your labels, but yes.
So I have a post in my Instagram highlights called Basics, which is just some, simple rules to follow. And when I tell people about reading nutrition labels, I always say read, read, read. You want to read the ingredients. You also want to read the carbohydrate count to make sure that, also we should probably talk about net carbs. So
I was just about to ask you, tell me about net carbs.
Let's do that. Net carbs is total carbs minus fiber. Fiber has no calories, basically inert. So you can subtract that from your carb count since it's not contributing to any of your calories for the day. So your net carbs are total carbs minus fiber. So when you read your labels, you read ingredients, you read your carbohydrate count, and then you read the serving size. You could have two identical products right next to each other, and one says it has 1 carb, and one says it has 1.5 carbs. But the serving size on one is, 1 tablespoon. The serving size on the other might be a 1/4 cup. So make sure that you're buying something that the serving size is an actual serving size and that you're not going to be eating like half a teaspoon of peanut butter for your 2 carbs or whatever it says on the label. So read the ingredients. If there's an ingredient like dextrose or some sort of hidden name for sugar, but it's 80 ingredients down, in my opinion, I'm not, and it's a low carb food, I'm not going to be worried about that. I know a lot of people are, and they will not buy anything with any sugar in it. If it's not in those first 5, 6 ingredients, it's probably a very minimal amount. And then if you, read the carb count and you see that it's almost 0, you can guarantee that there's not actually very much sugar in that. So read the serving size, read the ingredients, and read your carb counts.
And so you're going to find, we're going to talk about keto police, so to speak, in a few minutes, but you're also going to find that people can talk about, different things you should not be eating. For example, mayonnaise, which I would have included on my top 10 list of things I bought out the gate.
Me too.
And some people will say, you absolutely have to make your own. You cannot use store-bought mayonnaise. It has canola oil. Canola oil is bad for you. Listen, that may all be accurate. Canola oil may not be optimal for your body, but when you're starting out, it's fine. You're fine. It's fine. And if you want
you can't worry about being perfect.
Absolutely. And eating to be in ketosis as compared to eating a quote unquote clean diet are 2 different things. And you can always improve. And so if you get your head around eating a ketogenic diet and having mayonnaise, and 6 months in, you say, you know what, I'd love to clean up the ingredients that I have in my body, and you decide you're going to start making your own mayo, great. That's amazing. You should do that. It is better for you. But don't let someone discourage you from starting because they think canola oil is less than optimal for your body. Like, there's always ways to be better with the food you're choosing, but that can be different from whether or not you're eating a ketogenic diet.
Absolutely. And I have said this before, and I will say it again. If you shoot for perfect, you will always miss, and you will just be giving yourself an opportunity to be disappointed in yourself. So
set yourself up for failure.
You are setting yourself up for failure.
Absolutely.
If you really enjoy Hellmann's mayonnaise on your burger, by all means, eat your Hellmann's mayonnaise.
Can we be really honest for a second? Like Hellman's is delicious.
I know.
You know what else is delicious? Ranch dressing.
Like crappy
Oh
ranch.
my God, terrible. Like Kraft Ranch. Like, guys,
Yes.
it's so good. Is it the best thing?
So good.
No. Can I eat it on a ketogenic diet? I can. Should I?
I
Maybe
can.
not. But you know,
Maybe not.
there are ways to grow. There's room to grow. That's great. But don't let someone tell you that eating those things is not keto, or that you're not, or that you're hurting yourself, or whatever the case is. So just go there.
Yeah. And one thing I know for sure, even though I can eat ranch on keto, there's probably no excuse for how much actual ranch I consume.
Oh God, so much ranch.
So much ranch.
I just love it.
But it's so good.
It's so good, guys. Chicken wings and ranch, let me tell you.
Oh, so good. But seriously, with every choice you make, there's always good, better, and best.
Absolutely.
Don't worry about making the best, right? Like your canola oil versus avocado oil, neither of them are going to give you advantage, like getting into ketosis. One probably is way better for you, especially in the long run. But I 100% agree with you. You can't let those, that perfection keep you from starting or keep you from enjoying yourself. Just do the best you can.
Exactly. And then there's always room to grow. Always. Yeah. There's opportunity down the road. And if you decide that you need to make a change, that's great. But that's not a reason not to start. And if the way you get through those first 3 months of keto is that you really like mayonnaise and you really like ranch, great. That's amazing. You're doing great.
I really like mayo and I really like ranch.
I just love it. It's so good.
So we talked a little bit about keto police. Let's go there.
Oh,
there will be a lot of people that say that food is not keto.
What do they even mean by that, Emily?
That food is not keto. Or is this keto? I want to make something pretty clear before we go any further. Keto.
Can a food be keto?
No, it can't. A food can help support a ketogenic lifestyle.
Oh, okay.
But even table sugar, if you eat a small enough amount of it, is not going to throw you out of ketosis.
What about maple syrup?
I don't know the carb count for that because it's not a food that I choose to include in my diet. But I bet you anything I could have about a teaspoon and I'd live.
Right. Are scones keto?
Yeah, your scones are keto.
And so typically a regular scone probably is high enough in, flour and sugar and all of that nonsense to kick you out of ketosis and to limit your ability to maintain a ketogenic diet. But a food in itself is not keto. That doesn't make any sense. Ketosis is the state that your body is in or not in. And so a good example of this is you and I take part in recipe challenges sometimes. And one of our challenges was to use a certain brand of syrup. And they gave us a banana syrup and I made a banoffee pie. And I used a third of a banana for an entire pie. And I posted this and got 1,000 people saying, oh my God, I did not believe that bananas were keto. I didn't know they were keto. Now I know they're keto. No. If you eat an entire banana, you're probably in trouble. But if a pie that's cut into 10 pieces has a total of a third of a banana in it, you're probably okay.
That's right.
The key is the carb count. And so when people are looking at their day-to-day consumption, and I am like this, and this is an admission that I have to make, I enjoy a keto treat. And so if there's a keto treat that I want that has 3 grams of carbs in it, I will eat that and I will bypass vegetables because I want that treat. And so as long as you're keeping your carb count at a certain level, your body will be in ketosis. And we haven't mentioned yet, that number typically is 20 net carbs. So again, that's total carb minus fiber. For some people, prepare to have your mind blown. That number is as high as 50.
My mind is blown.
It can be really high for some people. For some people like me, I'm happier when I stay in the 15 to 20 total carb range. I don't deduct my fiber. I keep it all in one single count. So this is kind of what we were talking about earlier with everyone having to figure out what works for them. And that can be a scary thing because it's a lot easier to have someone give you rules and give you a chart saying, here's the exact allotment for you for every day. And
Right.
keto likely won't be like that. It can be. If you want to stick to 20 net carbs and just forge forward, you'll probably do fine. But if you want to learn a little bit more about your body, you'll have to do a little experimenting. And it was in experimenting that I found that I'm happier with like 15 total carbs. That's just kind of a place where I'm better. And I can still fit all kinds of things in there that may not be quote unquote keto.
I'm so boring. I started at 20. 20 worked for me. I stayed at 20 and I've never pushed it. I feel real good at 20.
Well, stop boring. That's perfect. No, that's amazing. That's great. That's what it should. Like, I mean, that's, if you've always felt great, then that's great. Like, there's no need to change that if that's what's working for you. Some people, if they hit like a goal weight, for example, and they want to maintain, they'll start to up that carb count and see like a happy spot at which they can, eat a little bit more and maintain. And like I said, that can be 50, that can be 60 for some people, which is just mind blowing to me.
Very.
If your fat intake is still high and the carbs that you're consuming are not like refined sugar, which does affect your body a little differently than some other carbs. We'll talk about, blood sugar levels at some point.
The only difference really is how fast your body turns it into blood sugar. I mean, all of the carbs sort of, what you hear, this actually is amazing and brings us to my next point, which are sort of keto pitfalls, like labels that we can fall for in grocery stores. If something says low glycemic index, that does not necessarily mean it's low carb.
No.
All of the sugars will eventually be turned into blood glucose, but the speed with which our bodies turns them into blood glucose is very different. So straight table sugar, which I think is like what, sucrose and fructose or something, fructose?
I believe so.
Is really high, and that's sort of what they use to measure everything else against. Whole grains are right up there with table sugar, which is interesting.
It is.
Something like bulgur or I don't know, is maybe a little bit slower, but it all still gets turned into the same amount of glucose in your body.
Mm-hmm.
So glycemic index just means the speed with which it's turned into blood sugar. It all still gets turned into blood sugar.
Absolutely. And there is some science to say that a lower glycemic index, like a sweet potato, is better for you because your body processes it more slowly. And
which is true, definitely true. But it doesn't have anything to do with your carb count, I think is my point.
Yes. I think that
it is apples and oranges.
Right. And you may not be in a position to want to go down this path right now, but in terms of GKI, this can affect it. So the speed with which your body spikes that blood sugar level will affect whether or not you're burning ketones. And if it's a slower spike,
right,
you can spike it. Ultimately, the spike won't hit the same height and it'll be slower. And so your body will maintain a burning of ketones for a longer period and get back to burning ketones quicker than if it's like the table sugar, which is interesting.
This is like keto 201 because the speed does have something to do with how much insulin your body produces, and how much insulin your body produces is what I believe kicks us out of ketosis, correct?
Yes.
So yeah, all of that is fascinating, but I do think falls into the category of keto 201.
Yes.
That's like a sophomore level podcast.
Sam I am can join us as a guest and talk all about that deep science.
Perfect. Okay. So low glycemic index, if you see that on a package, I'm not going to say that a food is keto or a food is not keto, but there are certain foods that are definitely not super keto friendly. And if you see these words, it does not mean that a food is keto friendly. So low glycemic index, great, but it doesn't necessarily reflect the carb count. Grain-free and gluten-free. People think if it's gluten-free that it must be low carb. No. I don't know about you, but I have seen several gluten-free oh my God, what is the plant called? Oh my gosh, cauliflower. Gluten-free cauliflower crust pizzas that have 30 grams of carbs per slice or something ridiculous.
No, it's outrageous. Mm-hmm.
So
Here's the other thing you need to know. A giant ass potato is also gluten-free.
that's right. Potato chips, gluten-free.
Yes.
Peppermints, gluten-free. Gluten-free does not mean healthy necessarily. Gluten-free does not mean low carb necessarily. Gluten-free means gluten-free. Okay. So why don't you take the last one about like if something is labeled sugar-free and what that can mean?
Yeah, sure. So the other thing to watch out for in grocery stores is like no sugar added or sugar-free items. I don't think much is labeled sugar-free these days. I think no sugar added has to be the language they use. But you have to be really careful of those things. First of all, so I'm going to start with the classic example of the wonderful ketoers who are out there is the Russell Stover no sugar added chocolate. It's a great place to start because it's a delicious way that some people, kind of offset starting this ketogenic diet if they've grown accustomed to eating certain treats in certain ways, and all of a sudden that's not a possibility. The Russell Stover no sugar added chocolate is a popular item. But do you know what the first ingredient is in the no sugar added Russell Stover chocolate?
I don't.
It's maltitol. And you know what maltitol does to a lot of people? First of all, it makes their body react as though they've consumed sugar. So effectively, it is the same as though you are eating sugar, and it can kick a lot of people out of ketosis. And then secondly, it can give a lot of people some really urgent,
some distress,
gastrointestinal issues. And so it's just serious distress. And here's what I need to tell you about that. And this is where we come back to figuring out what works for you and what doesn't. I can eat those Russell Stover chocolates. It does not kick me out of ketosis, and it does not make me sick. And that makes me pretty happy.
I have never tried them before because I didn't want to find out that I was a person who couldn't eat them.
Right. I mean, it can be graphic. If your body does not agree with them, it can be a serious situation.
Urgency.
It's not, but I always limit myself to like 2 at a time at the absolute most. But here's the thing I was going to caution against with those kinds of products is if you're looking to make a change in your life and a change in your diet, I typically strongly urge against always looking for replica products to just replicate or mimic how you were eating previously, because you're reinforcing those eating habits and you're just continuing to try to eat in the same way you always have. And it can be really hard to stick to something if you're just trying to fill your diet up with, replicas of past treats. For me, that is not a helpful way to continue on in my life, because it just makes me want to keep eating the way I was eating. Like I can't eat a cheeseburger every day. And if I'm trying to always replicate that, it can actually hinder my growth in the ketogenic diet rather than, further me in my goals. Independent of that, other things can be labeled no sugar added. Like there's wafer cookies out there that say no sugar added. Still super carby, like still a really bad choice. So again, we bring it back to read those labels. Just because something says no sugar added does not mean that it is something that's going to, support your ketogenic diet.
Exactly. Low glycemic, grain-free, gluten-free, sugar-free, those things do not mean low carb.
Certainly not. And again, the answer is always read the labels. And it can feel really daunting. And if you're out there and you're new and you just think like, I can't be that person standing in a grocery store aisle looking at a label, let me tell you, you can be. And you won't look that weird. You'll be in good company. Emily and I do it all the time.
We do. And after a while, you've got your favorites and you're not going to be the lady in the aisle reading all the labels.
The only time I do it is when I see a new product and I go, ooh, what's this? Or like,
exactly. Ooh, what's this? Oh, crap.
And then you turn around and it's like 28 grams of carbs per serving. Halo Top ice cream hit Canadian stores recently. And I was the girl standing in the aisle reading every food label for every single pint, like every different flavor. Because I had to know, spoiler alert, not that great. But I had to know. And so I was going through each label and each different chart of all of the nutritional information, thinking maybe there is one here that will appease the keto gods. And turns out, in my view, there is not.
Yep.
But it's entirely normal. And it can feel so weird at first, but I promise you, nobody cares. Nobody's watching.
Nobody cares. Nobody's watching you.
No one cares.
And no one cares. They're doing their own thing. So I think we've talked about this a little bit, but I'm going to have us give maybe like a really, really quick, like 30 seconds, the best advice you could give to someone who's starting.
Okay. You go first.
I'll go I'll go first. Number one, eliminate all sugars, starches, and grains, which will automatically eliminate almost every single packaged food.
Yes.
Shop the perimeter. Cuts of meat, flavorful cuts of meat. You don't need to avoid fat. You can have the ribeye, eggs, full fat cheeses, sausage, bacon, all of those things. Also, by sticking to those simple foods and not trying to get the keto version of the chocolate cupcake and everything, you will be giving yourself time to really reset your palate. You're going to be making a lot of changes, and you're going to be completely eliminating sweet from your diet. Well, at least I think you should in the beginning. Give yourself a break. Take the opportunity that you've been given. You're making an enormous change. Really take advantage of that opportunity to break your sweet tooth, break that habit. After a while, things will start tasting very sweet to you. Probably for the first time ever. Like romaine lettuce tastes sweet to me at this point in my life. Certainly didn't taste sweet to me when I was eating a standard American diet. So give yourself a break. Read everything. Keep your carbohydrates under 20. Keep it simple. Shop the perimeter of the store. Read everything. Be nice to yourself. Drink your water.
Oh, so I'm going to pick up where you left off. Be nice to yourself is literally like step one. Be nice to yourself. Be nice to yourself. If you're doing this to lose weight, don't let your inner monologue be, oh, you're fat and gross and all these terrible things, and you have to do this diet because you're unacceptable as you are. That's not going to help anyone. So just be kind to yourself. If you start trying keto and 4 days in, you slip up and you need to get back on, that's fine. Just pick up and carry on. No punishment, no negative talk. You will be fine. The other thing that I would say is find a few go-to meals. Let me give you this little spoiler alert. I'm 4 years in and I eat probably the same 3 or 4 things all the time. So like
yes,
bacon and eggs are like, for me, it's a Boursin urban garlic cream cheese omelet and bacon. My favorite thing, easy, always available, always in my fridge, no problem. I always have like a container of ground beef. I shouldn't say always, but like more often than not, that I can use to make like a taco bowl or a taco salad. Like find a few meals that feel good to you and make you happy. Taco salad's like my happy place, even before I started the ketogenic diet. The only difference now is I don't put the taco chips in, but that was always
me too. And I call it saladless taco salad because I just eat the meat and sour cream and guacamole.
Correct. There's no actual lettuce in my salad, but like that.
It's a saladless taco salad. Also cheese.
Yes, always. And so you have to figure out a few things for you that like in the blink of an eye, you can get together. You can feel good about that meal. It makes you feel like full and happy. And it's not something that you feel like, you're forcing yourself to eat. The other thing I did when I started out was we haven't talked a lot about convenience foods. They aren't really common on the keto diet. It's not great to have the convenience food, but I can tell you this much. Quest bars and a Starbucks Americano with heavy cream got me through an awful lot when I started on the keto diet because it's kind of a perfect meal. A Quest bar doesn't have a super high fat count, but it's convenient. It's loaded with protein. It's there. It's mostly clean. I mean, we can fight about it, but it's mostly clean. And then you get like an Americano with a good serving of heavy cream in it, and it can be a complete meal for the keto diet. And it was something I always had in my back pocket if I was out and about, or if I started this when I was in law school. So if I was, studying or at a coffee shop all day, I just kept a Quest bar with me and I put a lot of heavy cream in my coffee. And, it got me through. And knowing that I had those little like trick meals in my back pocket made it all seem bearable and made a big, big difference for me. But I cannot emphasize enough having a few meals that you just know I like. Caesar salad with bacon bits is like another great one. Just knowing I can always grab that and I'm happy. And then not being afraid of fat is what I would tell most people who are starting out. Like it feels so weird at first. But the quicker you adjust to consuming fat and upping that fat level, it really does make all the difference. And it'll help a lot with your satiety when you're eating, feeling like you're not restricting yourself, feeling like you're satisfied, feeling like you're full and you can go for a long time. That's all going to come mostly from your fat consumption. And early days, I've had so many people that I know start the diet and just balk at the amount of fat that they feel that they need to consume on it. And the quicker you get over being afraid of that, the better off you'll be.
The quicker that you can stop being afraid of that, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. And what you said about the Quest bar, the one thing that I truly, truly miss is purse food, those convenience foods, those foods that, like I said, don't go bad. I don't have a lot of foods that don't go bad. But if you are at the airport and it's going to be 12 hours before you can eat again or have access to a kitchen where you can prepare your own food, a 4 net carb Quest bar and a probably 1 or 2 carb heavy cream Americano, to me, again, good, better, best, that is a pretty good option.
Absolutely.
And if you're aiming for, if your goals are to be 100% clean, that's a different conversation. If your goals are to stay in ketosis, you're doing it.
And like the different conversation about aiming for 100% clean, like stay tuned, my friends. We will talk about it. Absolutely. Like Emily and I are both really into science of food and what clean eating means and what it is. And while we may not both practice it at all times, like we're interested in it. So we'll talk about it. I always think you can improve your diet. And there certainly are opportunities to do so. And let me be like 100% disclosure here. I don't eat Quest bars now regularly, never. They don't exist in my house. I don't keep them around. But when I started out, they were a big part of starting out. And I can tell you exactly as Emily said, if I'm traveling, I will likely get my hands on a couple, throw them in my bag, know that I can hit a Starbucks wherever I am and have a Quest bar or a Stoka bar. Stoka bars are
yes,
kids. And so like have something like that. They're not a part of my day-to-day life, but they're sort of like tools I have in my tool belt for certain situations where I need to have something convenient.
Yes. And we all at one point in our life are really going to benefit from a purse food. So
yeah, it's just a necessity.
No judgment.
And it's, yeah, I mean, a lot of airports, you're not going to find anything that you can eat. So you better plan ahead and be prepared.
Right.
And that's a big part of keto is foreseeing situations in which you're not going to have, the foods that you would prefer and planning accordingly. And there are certainly times at which a Quest bar in your purse goes a long way.
Absolutely. All right, Heather. I think we have talked about everything we really wanted to talk about for how to start keto. What is keto? How do I start? We didn't talk about keto mania, about like all the products. Do you want to touch on that or do you think we've talked enough?
We've probably talked enough and there'll be more episodes to come. Like we could do a whole episode on like keto products.
Absolutely. All right. Should we talk about next week's episode? Do we have a topic picked yet?
Well, you have the topic list, I think. So do we have a topic? Is it going to be binging? Bring Never Binge?
I think we should just stay on it because you're so in it right now with the club. And
it'll force you to finish the book.
It'll force me to finish the book and it's kind of fresh in our minds. Next week, we will be talking about disordered eating and the ketogenic diet.
Whether or not you can be dealing with a history of disordered eating and still pursuing a ketogenic diet, and what our experiences were. We both have a history of some disordered eating and how we have found, health and balance with the ketogenic diet.
That's right. So because we know next week's topic, and this is going to be coming out New Year's Day, we can also open up our email, which is theketohappyhour@gmail.com. If you have any show suggestions, or if you have a story about how the ketogenic diet has helped you, the history of disordered eating, give us a call. Not give us a call. They can't do that.
Lines are open now.
Send us an email. Yeah, send us an email. Let us know your thoughts.
Ask us questions, give us input. We really want the feedback. And since she just mentioned the name, this is the Keto Happy Hour, it's important that we talk about today's cocktail. We're both drinking bubbly.
Yes.
I have a beautiful glass of Prosecco. And for those of you who are saying, wait, I didn't think that alcohol was keto. First of all, we just talked about that. Secondly, it's important you know that Prosecco, a serving of Prosecco, has anywhere from like 2 to 3 grams of carbs and is entirely possible to enjoy on a ketogenic diet. And it's New Year's, y'all.
That's right. And 3 or 4 highly worth it carbs.
Absolutely. delicious carbs, zero problem carbs. My favorite thing to drink carbs.
My very favorite thing to drink carbs.
Yeah, they make us happy.
All right, Heather. Well, thank you very much for sharing this keto happy hour with me.
Oh, thanks for being my friend, Emily.
Thanks for being my friend, Heather.
You're the best.
Happy New Year's, and I hope you have the absolute best first day of 2019.
And you too.
Cheers.